Okay, today we'll discuss the last topic of the urogenital system, that is the development of the urogenital structures. So these are the specific objectives related to the topic. One is describe the development of the male and female reproductive system and list their anomalies. Second is list derivatives and remnants of the mesonephric and paramesonephric ducts in the male and female. And third is describe the development of kidney and urinary bladder. So to begin with, the we'll start with the development of the testis, and it is very much related to the ovary also. So both will be combined together, uh, unless the final stages where there will be differentiation. If not, both the development of testis and ovary will be similar. So, as we know, the sex of the person is determined right at the time of the fertilization, when the uh, X gamete, female gamete, will fuse with the X gamete of the male sperm, then it becomes female. And when the X gamete of female joins with the fuse with the Y sperm, then it will be male. Okay, so the sex is already determined at the fertilization, but the features will start appearing much more later. But the morphological characteristics appear only after the seventh week of gestation, even though the sex is already determined at the fertilization, but the features only appear after the seventh week of gestation. So, as I said, the determination of the sex of the fetus will be determined by Y chromosome, the presence of Y chromosome or the absence of the Y chromosome. So, if there is Y chromosome presence, then it will be male. If it is absent, then it will be female. Okay. So, the Y chromosome will have testis determining gene, or it is also called as the testis determining factor. So on the Y chromosome, there is a gene called as the testis determining gene or factor, also called as the SRY, the sex determining gene, or the region on Y chromosome. Okay, so usually it will be in the short arm. This is the site where it will be present. YP11. This is the point where this the testis determining gene or factor will be present, which will be actually determining the whether it becomes male or female. When it is present, then it will be male, and if it is absent, then it will be female. Gonads initially appear as pair of longitudinal ridges called as the genital or gonadal ridge. Initially, as I said, the testis or the ovary is not clearly determined, so it will be just called as the gonad. Okay, later it will determine itself into a male gonad or the female gonad. So initially it will be like a ridge, long ridge. Okay, so it will be a long gonadal ridge. If you see here this brown colored structure, this is the gonad. It will be a very long structure. Okay, later it becomes smaller and smaller and becomes the actual structure, which will be much more smaller than this ridge. So initially it will be like a long structure, that is called as the gonadal ridge. The germ cells appear only after the sixth week of gestation. Germ cells, that is the sperms or the eggs, will appear only after sixth week of gestation. The primordial germ cells, initially they will be in the stage of primordial. The primitive stage of the germ cells is called as the primordial germ cells. Their origin is from the epiblast. It will be from the epiblast, and they migrate to the endoderm cells in the yolk sac close to the allantois at the third week. If you see here, the primordial germs are produced here in the yolk sac. Okay, from the epiblast, then they start migrating. Okay, so here if you see here, This is the side view. This is the cut section. If you take a cut section of this one, here is the fetus. Okay, this is the yolk sac. Here is the amniotic cavity. So the primordial germ cells are produced here in the yolk sac, and they are get migrated. So if you take a section at this level, this is how it looks like. This is the gut, the GIT being formed, and here if you see here there is migration of the primordial germ cells, okay, from the epiblast, and they are migrating slowly towards the gonadal ridge. Here is the genital ridge or the gonadal ridge, and the cells are migrating at this to this layer here from the epiblast cells. Okay, so they migrate to the endoderm cells in the yolk sac close to the allantois at the third week. They migrate along the dorsal mesentery. This is called as the dorsal mesentery. Okay, so this is the dorsal mesentery, ventral mesentery in the front, dorsal mesentery is in the behind. So these are migrating toward the dorsal mesentery of the hind gut. Hind gut is the lowermost part of the gut, as you know, foregut, midgut, and hind gut. So the lowermost part is the hind gut. So they are migrating into the just behind the hind gut in the dorsal mesentery. And finally, they arrive in the gonads. Here are the gonadal, which are still in the form of a ridge. So they migrate in the form of the to the gonads at the fifth week. Okay, at the fifth week. Then they invade the gonads or the genital ridges in the sixth week. So finally, they reach the gonads at the sixth week. If they fail to reach the ridges, there will be no development of the gonads. So as you can see here, the development of these genital ridges or the gonads depends on these cells. If these cells migrate to the genital ridge and reach there, then this gonad will develop. If not, they will not develop. There will be no development of the gonads. This is a very important thing which you should note. The epithelium of the genital ridges. Now, if you take a section of this, okay, if you take a section of this, okay, genital ridge, and you see these cells and the structure within the gonad, this is how it looks like. Here is the gonad here. So the primordial germ cells are migrating into the genital ridge. This is the cross section of the genital ridge. Now, what are the changes which are taking place within this gonad? Still, it is not determined whether it is the testis or the ovary. So it will be common for both. Okay, initially. The epithelium of the genital ridges proliferate and penetrate underlying the mesenchymal just above the arrival of the primordial germ cells. So before the arrival of the primordial germ cells, here there will be the proliferating epithelium will take place. Here there will be formation of there will be proliferation of the epithelium. So the genital ridges proliferate and penetrate underlying mesenchyme. So if you see here, this is the mesenchyme. They are penetrating into the mesenchyme just before the arrival of the primordial cell. Before the arrival of this primordial germ cell, there is increase in the layer of the epithelium. Thus, there is formation of irregular shaped cords called as the primitive sex cords. Now, these proliferating cells or cycles which are being formed, new cells are being formed, they arrange themselves into primitive sex cords. These are called as the primitive sex cords, which are formed here, coming from the surface. This is the surface epithelium, and they are connected to the surface epithelium, and they are forming sex cords there. Then unable to differentiate into the male and female gonads, hence called as the indifferent gonads. Indifferent gonads. Okay, so still we cannot determine whether it is the testis or the ovary. So these are called as the indifferent gonads. Okay, so these are the indifferent gonads. Now it will determine itself into the specific organ. Okay, now how it develops into the ovary. So you have seen this is the surface epithelium of the genital ridges, and their formation of the sex cords here, and there is proliferation of the cells are migrating, primitive cells are being migrated. Now, if it is ovary in females, the primitive sex cord dissociate into clusters which occupy medullary part. Now, if you see here, these sex cords which are formed here, they dissociate themselves and they migrate into the medulla. So these are called as the degenerating medullary cords. If you see here, these are the degenerating medullary cords which are being formed here. Okay, so if you see here, this is the surface epithelium, and now these cells are dissociating themselves from chains, and they are migrating into this where they degenerate. So in the female, the primitive sex cord dissociate into clusters which occupy the medulla. They come into the center, which is the medullary part, and later disappear. As you can see here, these cells are migrating, and now they are disappearing, and replaced by the vascular stroma and form the ovarian medulla. So now it forms itself into the ovarian medulla. The surface epithelium continue to proliferate, and in the seventh week give rise to second generation cords called as the cortical cords. Now, after this disappearance of these cells here, sex cords, now there is secondary generation cords are being formed. These are called as the cortical cords. Okay. Once they migrate and disappear here, now there is formation of the secondary cords which are formed at the seventh week. At the third month, these cords split to cluster which proliferate and surround each oogonium with a layer of epithelium cells called as the follicular cells. Now these cells, now they form a follicular cells surrounding each of these oogonium. Oogonium are the primitive sex cells which are present within the ovary, and here they are covered by the follicular cells, which are the flat cells which are surrounding this. Finally, forming the primordial follicles. Now these are called as the primordial follicles. Later they modify themselves into the primary, then secondary, and the mature Graafian follicles. So the most primitive form of the follicles are now formed, primordial follicles. Now they stay for a very long time. They are in this state for a very long time, and only few cells, even when they develop mature, only few cells from these primordial follicles will become the primary, secondary, and the tertiary follicles. So that was in case of the test in the ovaries. Now, how it differentiate within the testis? If it is the testis which is being formed, now the same cells which are coming from the surface epithelium and then the sex cords are there, so they will remain as the sex cords. Okay, they will not disappear, but they develop into the medulla of the undifferentiated genital ridges proliferate of the coelomic epithelium at the seventh week of intrauterine life. The primitive sex cells, gonocytes, will be coming from the dorsal hindgut, and in the seventh month of intrauterine life, there will be canalization of these sex cords. So initially here we have seen that the sex cords are formed, but in case of the ovary they disappear. Okay, but in case of the testes, they canalize. They canalize. You see here they are getting canalized in the seventh month of intrauterine life, and then they also form the rete testis. Here this part will be forming into rete testis. Then efferent ductules of the testis, 12 to 15, persist as mesonephric tubules. Later these some of these will form the efferent ductules of the testis, which are persistent mesonephric tubules. The canal of the epididymis and vas deferens is also formed. Now there is canalization of the whole of the epididymis. So here this is the mesonephric duct. We'll talk about these ducts later. Uh, just initially you can see here there are changes taking place within the testis. So there is canalization of the sex cords, and then there is formation of the epididymis. Later there will be canalization of the epididymis as well as this long ducts. We'll talk about that ducts. Now coming to the descent of the ovaries and testes. So actually these ovaries and testes are formed within the abdomen. Okay, so initially ovaries develop within the abdomen. Later they descend and end their journey just below the rim of the true pelvis. So they are produced. They are actually developing in the abdomen. Later they migrate and come to the true pelvis. They end below the true pelvis. Below the abdomen is the pelvis. So they end in the pelvis. It is considered less into the pelvis compared to the testis. In case of the testis also, that also descends from the abdomen, same side. From there it descends, but it will not be into the pelvis, but it will descend much more down into the scrotum. So it is, in case of ovaries, it is less descent, because it will remain in the within the true pelvis. This is the true pelvis here, where the uterus, fallopian tubes, as well as the ovaries are present. The cranial part of the genital ligaments form the suspensory ligament of the ovary. If you see here, there is something called as the suspensory ligament of ovary. Okay, so it is nothing but the cranial part of the genital ligament. There will be something called as the genital ligament, which will later formed into the suspensory ligament of the ovary. The caudal part below, here is the ovary. The caudal part means below. Caudal means tail. So cranial means toward the head. Head part of the ovary will be the suspensory ligament of ovary, and below, near the tail of the ovary, there will be the ligament of the ovary proper. Ligament of the ovary proper, which is also called as the round ligament of the uterus. Round ligament of the uterus. So this is a very important structure, which is nothing but the suspensory ligament of the ovary, as well as the round ligament of the uterus. Okay, the round ligament of uterus passes through the inguinal canal and ends into the labia majora. If you see here, this is the labia majora, and here this is the same round ligament. It is entering into the inguinal canal. The inguinal canal, in case of the female, will contain this round ligament, and it will go all the way up to the labia majora. Now coming to the descent of the testis, just like the descent of the ovary, as you can see here, this is the fetus. You can see the testes are much more higher in the abdomen in the initial stages of development. They are in the abdomen. Later they descend. By the fourth month, they reach the iliac fossa. So by the fourth month of intrauterine life, they reach the iliac fossa. By the seventh month, it will reach the deep inguinal ring. So slowly it is descending in the every stages. So if you see here, this is the inguinal canal. So it has reached the superficial inguinal ring. Now it is going towards the deep inguinal ring. Then it goes into the scrotum. Okay. So by the seventh month, it will reach the deep inguinal ring, and by the eighth month, traverses through the inguinal canal, and by the ninth month it reaches the scrotum. So at birth or immediately after birth, it will reach the scrotum. So examination of the scrotum is very important in the case of the newborn. So this clinical importance, this is the clinical importance, that to check the descent of the testes as soon as a newborn is male child. Always check for the scrotum for the descent of the testes. Okay. So it will reach just before the birth or immediately after birth. The testis will reach the scrotum. So this is all the way passage through which it will be passing. Okay, and these are the different stages in the different months where it will reach the different sites. The process vaginalis passes as the closed vaginal slag. When this testis is descending downwards, there is the peritoneal fold which is coming along with the testis into the scrotum. This is called as the process vaginalis. This is very important in case of the hernias. If it remains persistent, here it is closed already, so it descends downwards and the remaining part closes, and if it remains persistent, then it leads to a condition called as the congenital hernia, which is seen in case of some of the children, where the hernia is present because of the persistence of the process vaginalis. Okay, so you should know why this process vaginalis will remain. Okay, now coming to the factors which help in the descent of the testis. Okay, one of the very important factor is called as the gubernaculum testis. Gubernaculum testis. So what is this gubernaculum? So if you see here, this is the testis here. So below the testis, even if you see this picture, so below the testis there is a ligament-like structure extending from the caudal part of the testis into the scrotum. This is called as the gubernaculum. So this is always present there. If you see here, here also it is present everywhere. This gubernaculum is present. Okay. So what is this gubernaculum testis? It is nothing but a fibromuscular band proximally attached to the lower pole of the testis. As you can see here, it is attached to the lower pole of, if you imagine this is the testis, and it is coming, the testis is descending down into the abdomen, from the abdomen into the scrotum. So this is the the whole stages. This is the early stages, and now it has reached the scrotum. This is the testis here. Okay, so at the lower pole of the testis, there is this ligament attached. This is called as the gubernaculum. Proximally attached to the lower pole of the testis, this gubernaculum testis, peritoneum in front of the testis, and mesonephric duct behind. So this is the relation. The distal part splits to the tail of Lockwood, which is attached to the bottom of the scrotum. If you see here, the other end, one end is attached to the lower part of the testis, the other part is attached to the scrotum. Okay. The perineum, symphysis pubis, saphenous opening, and anterior superior iliac spine. These all the areas where it is attached. Okay. So this is a very important structure, which will one of the factors of the descent of the testis. Okay. So to be sure, there is no particular uh, factor which has been determined to be the main factor for the descent of the testis. So it is still not sure which factor is the most important among the factors which help in the descent of the testis. But it is thought to be, because there is no other assurity except the gubernaculum. So this is thought to be the main cause of the descent of the testis. So this gubernaculum testis will be thought to be the guiding force which widens the inguinal canal so that the testis can descend, and this is absent in case of the elephants. This gubernaculum testis is absent in case of the elephants. So in those elephants, we have seen that the testis is intra-abdominal. So it is absent only in case of the elephant, and there the testis is intra-abdominal. But in all other animals and human beings, the gubernaculum testis is present, and it is in the scrotum. So this might has been thought to be the main factor which might be helping in the descent of the testis, gubernaculum testis. There are other factors like the intra-abdominal pressure itself. Okay, the intra-abdominal pressure is quite positive and high, which might be pushing the testis into the scrotum. As well as we know that the spermatogenesis takes place at a lower level of almost 4 degrees lower than the body temperature. So for the testis to function properly, for the spermatogenesis to take place, the temperature should be lower. Okay. uh, so if it remains within the abdomen, then it has been seen that it leads to infertility. So this might be also an important factor, the intra-abdominal temperature, which is much more higher, which is not suitable for the spermatogenesis. So it is thought this intra-abdominal temperature is also a factor. Then the arch fibers of the internal oblique. As you know, the internal oblique fibers form the anterior wall, the roof, and the posterior wall for the inguinal canal. So this might be this arching fibers of the internal oblique, which squeezes whenever you move and do any work which increases the intra-abdominal pressure. It squeezes. So this squeezing might also help in the descent of the testis, as well as the uncurling of the fetal curves. The fetus will be totally curved, but the uncurling of the fetal curves might also help in the descent of the testis. Then the internal secretion of the fetal testis itself. So which secretion might be helping in the driving the testis into the abdomen, like the interstitial cells secrete hormones which organizes the differentiation of the gubernaculum. So the interstitial cell secretion, which helps in the differentiation of the gubernaculum, might be helping in the its descent also. So these are some of the factors which might be helping in the descent. Even though we are not very much sure which factor will be helping, but these are thought to be some of the important factors. Among them, the most important is thought to be the gubernaculum testis, then the intra-abdominal pressure, then the intra-abdominal temperature and pressure, then arching fibers of the internal oblique which squeezes, then the uncurling of the fetal curves as well as the internal secretion of the fetal testis itself. Now, what happens if there is no descent or incomplete descent of the testis? So that we'll see. What these are called as the anomalies of the descent. If there is no proper descent, then it is called as anomalies of descent of the testis. So what are the different types of anomalies we can see? Developmental, these are called as developmental anomalies because these are taking place because of the improper development. So one is called as the most important and the commonest will be the anarchism, or it is also called as the cryptorchism or anarchism, where in the abdomen it will be present, the testis will be present in the abdomen, and as I said, if it is present in the abdomen, this is not suitable for the spermatogenesis to take place. So the usually the person will be sterile, that male will be sterile. Okay, and it is also seen that whenever it is present within the abdomen, it is also prone for malignant changes. Usually it goes for the carcinoma of the testis itself. Okay, so these are some of the abnormalities which are because of the anarchism or the cryptorchism. Then there is also a condition called as the monarchism. So one testis will be the abdomen and the other will be normal. So one side the testes are descended normally, but on the other side it might be within the abdomen, stuck within the abdomen. So this is called as the monarchism. Okay, mono means, as you know, it is single. So the monarchism. Then partially descended testes. There might be descent, but it is incomplete. It is not gone up to the scrotum. So in this, the partially descended testis can be in different stages. As you can see here, it can be within the deep inguinal ring, the inguinal canal itself, or the superficial inguinal ring, or some other places. And it can be treated sometimes. It can be treated by hormones, and sometimes with a surgery called as the orchiopexy, where the testes are pulled back into the scrotum. Okay, so this is for the partially descended testis. Partially, it is not complete descent. Then ectopia testis. So if this follows this different stages in its path, then it is called as the partially descended. But if it goes into some other region, okay, then it is called a ectopia testis, where in case of the it is present in the perineum. Okay, in especially in case of pigs, usually it is present in the perineum, but in humans it will be the scrotum. But if it goes into the perineum, then it is called a ectopia testis, as well as sometimes goes in front of the pubic symphysis, front of the pubic symphysis. So these are called as the ectopia testis. As you can see here, this is the penile as well as other different stages. Okay, different types of ectopia testis. Here you can see here the perineal. It is in the perineum, not in the scrotum. It is in the perineum. Femoral, transscrotal, as well as the superficial ectopia, as well as the perineal. Okay, in front of the penis. Okay, so these are the ectopia testis. Ectopia means away from its normal descent, somewhere else. Okay. Then completely patent process vaginalis. I was talking about the process vaginalis when during the descent, as I said, a part of the peritoneum will be pulled into the scrotum. As you can see here, this is the peritoneum. When the testis is descending, it will pull a part of the peritoneum. Later, this whole part will close. Okay. As you can see here in the stage, it is totally closing, totally out. Sometimes it remains as such. Okay, it is remains as per se. That is called as the patent process vaginalis. Patent process vaginalis. Okay, so we're talking about what? Okay, okay, completely patent process vaginalis, where the part of the peritoneum which is supposed to disappear doesn't closes or disappear, which might lead to congenital, as I said, congenital inguinal hernia. Is here, if you can see here, Here is the testis, this is the scrotum, and this is the abdominal wall. And you can see here the process vagina, it is patent, and a part of the intestine have also come into this. This is called as the congenital hernia, because of the non closure of the process vaginalis. Then there is another stage which is called as the encysted hydrocele or spermatic cord. The process vaginalis is patent in the middle part. So usually, as I said, the process vagina has to disappear. If it remains totally patent, then it leads to hernia. If it remains patent in a small part in the middle, then it is called as the encysted hydrocele. Encysted hydrocele, it is confined hydrocele. Then there is also a anomaly called as the inversion of the testis. It has, in case of this condition, the testis has descended normally into the scrotum, but it is inverted. Okay, the process vaginalis is behind, that is, usually it will be in front of the testis, but in this case it will be behind. That leads to inversion of the testis itself. So these are some of the different anomalies if there is abnormal descent of the testis. Anarchism or cryptorchism, then monarchism, partially descended testis, ectopia testis, completely patent process vaginalis, encysted hydrocele, as well as the inversion of the testis. So these are some of the different anomalies. Now we will come to the two important ducts which leads to development of most of the genital organs. So the development of the genital ducts. So the genital ducts, there are two pairs of genital ducts. One is called as the mesonephric duct, and the second is called as the paramesonephric duct. Mesonephric, as you can see in this picture, this is the mesonephric duct. Okay, and here is the paramesonephric duct. Yellow colored structure is the paramesonephric duct, and this green colored structure is the mesonephric duct. Mesonephric duct is also called as the Wolffian duct. Wolffian duct. And paramesonephric duct is also called as the Mullerian duct. The mesonephric duct is the duct of the male reproductive organs, which give rise to the epidermis, vas deferens, seminal vesicles, and etc. So mesonephric duct is the male duct which gives rise to the male reproductive organs. In contrast, the paramesonephric duct is the duct of the female reproductive organs, which give rise to the development of the fallopian tubes, uterus, cervix, as well as part of the vagina. So if you see here, so these are the mesonephric and paramesonephric duct. Mesonephric duct, when it develops, so if you see here, this is part of the structure which is developing into testis here, and this part will form the epidermis, as you can see here, and this remaining part will form the long vas deferens or the ductus deferens. Okay, but in case of the female, the paramesonephric duct will develop, and these become the fallopian tubes, as you can see here, fallopian tubes, and these two join together in the middle to form the uterus and the vagina. So it develops as longitudinal invagination of the epithelium of the urogenital ridges. It will develop from the urogenital ridges, and this, if you can see here again, though both the ducts have been shown here. Here, if you can see here, this is the mesonephric duct, that is the Wolffian duct, and this is the paramesonephric duct. Mesonephric duct developing itself into this epidermis and vas deferens in case of male. Here you can see this the testis and developing. On the other side, this blue colored structure is the paramesonephric duct, which develops in case of the female. Here it has developed into ovary, and the two ducts have joined, fused together, which will form the uterus. The unfused part will form the fallopian tubes, and the a part of the vagina also. Okay. So this is how the two ducts will develop into different structures. So the cranial part form the infundibulum in case of the female. If you see here, this is the Mullerian duct, which will form the infundibulum. As you can see here, this form the infundibulum, and remaining forms form the uterine tubes. If you see here, the remaining part of this form the uterine tubes or the fallopian tubes. The caudal part fuses with the opposite paramesonephric duct and develops into the uterine canal. If you see here, the part which both the fallopian this paramesonephric duct will fuse together, to form the uterine canal, which form the corpus, the body, and the cervix of the uterus. Okay. The distal tip projects into the posterior wall of the urogenital sinus, where we see the development of the small swelling, the paramesonephric duct or the Mullerian tubercles. If you see here, the lower part will form the paramesonephric or the Mullerian tubercles will develop into the vagina. Now coming to the anomalies of the uterus. So what are the anomalies you can find? So these are some of the important anomalies which you find if there is improper development. If when the two tubes don't fuse, when the two paramesonephric duct which we have already seen, if they don't fuse properly, then it leads to a condition called as the double uterus and the double vagina here. So there are two uterus as well as the two vagina. Sometimes they have fused together, but a part still remains as indentation. So this is one state. And sometimes the vagina has fused, but the uterus remains as two separate tubes. The two tubes have not completely fused. So there are two uterine cavities. So this is called as the bicornate uterus. Okay, bicornate uterus. And sometimes one fallopian, one paramesonephric duct has developed well, and the other remains as incomplete development. Okay, this is the within a type of the bicornate uterus. Okay. Then sometimes there is the fusion is complete, and part of the cervix has not it has not no cavity here, so it has totally fused here. So this is called as the cervical atresia. Cervical atresia. Similarly, instead of in case of the cervix, it can be in the vagina. So this is called as the vaginal atresia. Vaginal atresia. So these are some of the developmental anomalies which we can see because of the incomplete fusion of the paramesonephric duct. Paramesonephric duct is the main duct which helps in the development of the female genital organs. Now coming to the development of the vagina itself. So it partly develops from these two fused tubes, paramesonephric ducts, and partly from the other structure. So we'll see what is that. When the distal tip of the paramesonephric duct reaches the urogenital sinus, as you can see here, here is the urogenital sinus, and these are the two fused paramesonephric ducts. We see development of two solid evaginations from sinus called as the sino-vaginal bulb. Here, if you see here, there is development of something called as the sino-vaginal bulb, which proliferate to form the solid vaginal plate. Later, it formed the solid vaginal plate. It increases distally between the uterus and the urogenital sinus. So now it was a solid structure bulb here, sino-vaginal bulb. Now it increases and develops greatly into a larger structure. Okay. It increases distally between the uterus and the urogenital sinus. At the 5th month, it gets canalized to form the vagina. If you see here, now it has canalized itself. So now you can see this whole vagina. Upper part is developing from the two paramesonephric ducts, and the lower part is developing from the sino-vaginal bulb. So this is very important, especially in case of the carcinoma. Okay, so you should know where the carcinoma has taken place. Well, if it is in the upper part, the manifestations are different, and if it is in the lower part, the manifestations are different. This is because now you know, because it is because of the different developmental areas. Okay. The expansion of the vagina around the uterus developed to form the vaginal fornices. Around the cervix, the vagina will develop and into spaces. These are called as the fornices. Around the vagina, around the cervix, the vagina has space. This is called as the fornix. Okay, the vaginal fornix, which are paramesonephric origin. So these fornices are also developed from the paramesonephric, just like the uterus and the fallopian tubes. Even the fornix and the upper part of the vagina all develop from the paramesonephric ducts. So now you know that the vagina has dual origin. So as I said, the dual origin is very important clinically. Okay, so we should know the dual origin. The upper part develops from the uterine canal, that is nothing but the paramesonephric ducts. The lower part has developed from the urogenital sinus from here. Okay, urogenital sinus and the urogenital bulbs. The lumen of the vagina is separated from urogenital sinus by a thin plate called as the hymen. So initially, so this vagina is covered by a thin plate called as the hymen. Okay. The mesonephric duct totally disappear in females except a small cranial portion found as the epiphoron and paraphoron. Mesonephric duct is the male duct. So initially, both ducts are present in case of the male and the female. But in case of the female, the male duct will disappear. In case of the male, the female duct will disappear. So, as I said, in case of the female, the male duct, that is the mesonephric duct, will totally disappear. So, if you see here, this is the male duct, which is supposed to be forming the vas deferens and other things. So, it will totally disappear. So, this part has developed into the ovary, and the remaining part will disappear totally. Okay. The paramesonephric duct have already developed into the fallopian tubes and the uterus and the vagina. And the mesonephric duct, it totally disappear except some structures which remain as a epiphoron and paraphoron. If you see here, so these are the remnants of the mesonephric duct, the male duct in case of the female, that is the epiphoron and the paraphoron. This disappeared mesonephric duct is called as the Gardner's duct. In case of the female, the male duct disappearance, the disappeared duct is called as the Gardner's duct. Okay. A small caudal portion of the Gardner duct is found in the wall of the uterus or the vagina. It forms the Gardner's cyst. So a part of this Gardner duct which has disappeared will remain within the vagina. This is called as the Gardner's cyst. Gardner is the scientist who found this. So these are called as the Gardner cyst. These are nothing but the remnants of the male duct, that is the mesonephric duct in case of the female. Now we'll just summarize what are the structures which are developing from the male duct in case of the male, and what are the structures developing from the paramesonephric duct in case of the male, even though it is a female duct. But as I said, both ducts will be present in both male and female. So similarly, we'll see in the female what are the structure developing from the mesonephric and paramesonephric duct. So here is the chart showing you all the structures. So as you know, paramesonephric duct is the duct of the female. So it develops, in the case of the female, it develops into the uterine tubes, so that is the fallopian tubes, the uterus, as well as the upper vagina. Okay, but similarly, the paramesonephric duct is also present in the case of the male. So it will totally disappear except a part of it which remains as the appendix of the testis as well as the utricle of the prostate. These are the two remnants of the paramesonephric duct in case of the male. Similarly, the mesonephric duct, that is the male duct, in case of the male, developed into all the structures, the appendix of the epididymis, the epididymis itself, the ductus deferens or the vas deferens, ejaculatory duct, seminal vesicles, all are developing from the mesonephric duct, that is the male duct. So this duct is also present in case of the female, which will totally disappear except some remnants called as the appendix of the ovary, as well as the Gardner's duct, as well as the epiphoron and paraphoron, which you saw. So all these are the some of the structures which are present in case of the male and the female. So the derivatives of the mesonephric and paramesonephric duct, both in case of the male and the female. Now coming to the development of the external genitalia. External genitalia in females is especially in the under the influence of the estrogen. As we know, estrogen plays a very important role in the development of the external genitalia. At the third week, the mesenchymal cells originate in the primitive streak and migrate around the cloacal membrane to form a pair of elevated folds called as the cloacal folds. Later I will show you these cloacal folds here. So if you see here, these are the cloacal membrane and the cloacal fold, and here will be the labioscrotal swellings here on either side. So these are the cloacal membrane and the folds. So these are formed at the third week. Cranially, the cloacal folds unite to form the genital tubercles. Cloacally, if you see here, it forms cranially, it will form the genital tubercle. Okay, so this is common initially at the initial stages. We'll compare both in case of the male and female. Then the genital tubercles slightly elongate to form the clitoris and penis. In case of the males, this genital tubercle, if you see here, it will elongate to form the penis here. But in case of the female, it becomes initially it elongates, then it becomes rudimentary, and that will form the clitoris. In case of the female, it forms the clitoris. In case of the male, it forms the penis. Okay, genital tubercles elongate to form the clitoris in case of the female and penis in case of the male. Okay. The caudally, the cloacal folds are divided into anterior urethral folds and the posterior anal folds. If you see here, these cloacal membrane or cloacal folds will form anteriorly into the urethral folds and posteriorly to the anal folds behind toward, near the anus, and the genital folds around near the genitalia. The urethral folds do not fuse as in case of male. So these urethral folds fuse in case of the, if you see here, these are the two urethral folds, they fuse in case of the male. Initially they will be open, later they fuse. But in case of the female, they remain separate. These cloacal folds will remain, this urethral, especially the urethral folds within the cloacal folds will remain separated, and they form the labia minora. As you can see here, these two labial folds will form the labia minora. But in case of the male, it will fuse, totally fuse. The genital swellings of folds of connective tissues develop around the urethral folds. If you see here now you are seeing this labioscrotal folds, also called as the genital folds. So if you see here, they are developing into the scrotum in case of the male, but in case of the female, they will form the labia majora. Labia majora. So the genital swellings of folds of connective tissue develop around the urethral fold. These will form the scrotal swellings in male and labia majora in case of the female. The urogenital groove is open in females and forms vestibule. In case of the female, this the urethral folds will remain separate, and this will be called as the vestibule. This open structure within this two labia minora, this space will be called as the vestibule. Now finally going to the development of the kidneys and the bladder. It will be a short, okay. It will be within these 3 slides. We'll try to finish within 2 o'clock. Okay. So the development of the kidneys. So the kidneys develop from the intermediate mesoderm in the craniocaudal direction into 3 successive kidneys. Initially, if you see here, the kidneys will be very long structures, just like we saw the genital ridge. There will be ridges here also on either side. Okay, so these are developing from the intermediate mesoderm. So in the initial stages, this is called as the pronephros. Pronephros. The long ridges will be called as the pronephros. Later, it develops into the mesonephros. It modifies itself into mesonephros as it starts becoming smaller and smaller. It becomes mesonephros. Then finally, the most well-developed and the latest one will be the metanephros. So the pro and mesonephros are temporary kidneys, and the metanephros persists as the permanent kidney. So initial pro means the primitive type of kidney, which will be called as the pronephros, which will be a long ridge. Later, it modifies itself into a smaller structure called as the mesonephros. Finally, it develops into the well-developed kidney, that is called as the permanent kidney, which is also the metanephros. So pronephros and mesonephros are the temporary kidneys, and the metanephros will be called as the permanent kidney. Okay, so this is nothing but the same structure changing into different stages, in the primitive stage, in the middle stages, and the final stages. So here the brown color structure, this is the well-developed metanephros, that is the well-developed kidney. The fetal kidney develops in the pelvis. So as we saw, the testes are developing in the abdomen and descending into the the scrotum and the pelvis. Okay, so the female ovaries will go into the pelvis, but the kidneys are developed in the pelvis and then they migrate into the abdomen. This is just the opposite. So the fetal kidneys develop in the pelvis, later ascend upwards into the abdomen till it reaches the diaphragm. So if you see here, this is in the pelvis. Now slowly the kidney starts ascending upwards and it is going up into the abdomen. Okay, so these are the kidneys which are developing in the pelvis and ascending upward, just opposite to the gonads. So during its ascent, it arteries too change their origin during the ascent of the kidney. If you see here, initially when the kidney is in the pelvis, it will be supplied by the pelvic arteries, that is the internal and external iliac arteries. Then, as it ascend upward, that arteries will disappear, new arteries are formed, and then they will be supplying the kidney from the lower abdominal aorta. Then, as the kidney ascend upwards, then it will be given by the arteries coming from the upper part of the abdominal aorta. So the arteries also change during its ascent. Okay, so its arteries too change their origin during the ascent of the kidney. Fetal kidney is lobulated and it is made up of 12 lobes, but this view will fuse after birth. As we have seen, there are 12 lobes in case of the kidney, the pyramids and the cortical arches together they are called as the lobes. So as you can see here, these are the lobed kidney. So initially it will be in the form of separate lobe, later they all fuse to form a single kidney. The fetal kidney, as I said, will be lobulated and will be later fused. But sometimes there might be developmental abnormalities. These are called as anomalies, congenital anomalies. Okay. One is the horseshoe-shaped kidney. Horseshoe-shaped kidney. If you see this structure here, the two kidneys, when they are present in the pelvis, the the lower part of the kidney might get fused because the kidneys, when they are in the pelvis, they are very close to each other. Sometimes both the lower poles of both the kidneys might fuse and it looks like a horseshoe. So this is called as the horseshoe-shaped kidney. Sometimes there might be incomplete ascent of the kidney that leads to pelvic kidney. If you see here, one kidney has ascended into the abdomen, but the other kidney is within the pelvis. It has not ascended. So incomplete ascent of the kidney will lead to the pelvic kidney. So sometimes you can trace the kidneys within the pelvis. Then you should know this is because of the incomplete ascent during its development. Then there can be a pancake kidney. When the I said this is horseshoe kidney when the lower poles are fused. If both the lower poles and the upper poles are fused together, they will surround the abdominal aorta itself and compress, and there will be a lot of abnormalities or characteristic features because of the compression of the abdominal aorta. So when the kidney is around the aorta, fusing all the two, both the lower poles and the upper pole around the aorta, and they look like a cake. So that's why it is called as the pancake kidney. Sometimes, as I said, initially the kidney will be lobulated, then it will all fuse. So this sometimes will remain as lobulated kidney. Incomplete fusion of the lobe will lead to lobulated kidney, as you can see here. Then absence of kidney on one side. Sometimes the kidney might be absent totally on one side and it has developed well in the other side. Okay. Sometimes they can be double ureter or double kidneys. So sometimes both the kidneys might come in the same position, and then there can be double kidney or the double ureters. As you can see here, there are two ureters. Okay. Sometimes there can be double ureters and double kidney on the same side. Sometimes the renal artery arising from the iliac artery or the lower aorta. As I said, during its ascent, the kidney will change its blood supply. Sometimes it remains as in the early development, and it might be coming from the lower part of the abdomen or from the internal iliac artery itself. Okay, so these are some of the congenital anomalies of the kidney. Finally, going to the development of the bladder, just a brief part of it. The development of the bladder is from the trigonum vesicae, especially the base of the bladder, which is posterior, will be developing from the trigonum vesicle, from the mesoderm, mesonephric ducts. So mesonephric duct, as you can see here, is a mesonephric duct which will form the trigonum vesicle. These two ducts have come together and they fuse to form the trigonum vesicle, which is seen from the inside, which is the base of the bladder. The remaining part will be developing from the endoderm of the cloaca. Cloaca is here, so this is the cloaca here, which will form the rest of the mucous membrane. So only the trigonum is developing from the mesoderm, mesonephric ducts. The remaining part will develop from the cloaca. Okay. The apex absorption of the proximal part of the atlantic diverticulum will form the apex. We have already discussed about the apex, how it opens into the how it is connected to the umbilicus, and which might lead to the weeping umbilicus if there is no of the disappearance of that ligament there. Okay. Then musculature and other structures will develop from the splanchnic layer of the lateral plate mesoderm. So only the mucosa will be developing for the trigonum. It will be developing from the mesonephric duct, and the cloaca will be forming the mucosa of the remaining part of the bladder, and the musculature will be coming from the splanchnic layer of the lateral plate mesoderm. So this is all about the bladder, the kidney, as well as the genital organs. So if you have any doubts regarding this, you can ask me now.